عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين. Salatu wassalam ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen. Amma ba'd. Just to follow on from what Imam Eid benefited us with, may Allah reward him with the best of rewards. My reminder to myself and everybody that can hear this is the importance of benefiting others with ilm after you have acquired it. Because ilm isn't stagnant. It isn't something that just sits still. It's an amana, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls it a nur and a hidayah. Therefore, if a person has attained it, this now becomes a responsibility, because it is either approved for him or against him. But to reiterate this point and the importance of this point, just like what Muallim Eid did, is give you 4 or 5 bullet points so that it can, inshallah, remain with us. The first bullet point or question really is, why do we even seek ilm? In order for us to understand the importance of seeking ilm and then teaching others and benefiting others, what is even the purpose of seeking ilm? In other words, some of the ulama have asked this question is, how do you know that you are sincere in seeking ilm? All acts of worship require conditions. From the greatest of them in ikhlas. If a person does it to show off for any other reason, it won't be accepted from him. You won't find any khair or barakah in it. The ulama have said, you are sincere in seeking ilm, and the objectives of seeking ilm if you have 3 or 4 characteristics. Number 1, raf' al-jahl, to remove ignorance from yourself, sincerely. Number 2, hifdh al-ilm, to preserve the ilm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted you, whatever you have learned. Number 3, difa' al-sharia, to preserve the sharia. Imagine you had a whole nation that didn't seek ilm. What would happen if 1 generation, 2 generations went by? What would happen to our religion? Isn't it what happened to the people of the book and other religions from before, that things were lost and corrupted? And then the 4th thing, as we mentioned with Uthaymeen, rahimahullah, in Kitab al-Ilm, is to act upon that ilm. If a person doesn't have these 4 things, we question that person's sincerity, and he needs to question himself as to why he's seeking that ilm. If the person has these 4, even if he doesn't acquire what he wants to acquire for himself, he is upon khair. The virtues that you have had all apply to him. Even if he doesn't become Shaykh al-Islam, he's on the path of Jannah. Allah has elevated him. Allah is going to wish good for him, etc. So that's the first thing. Why do we even seek ilm? The purpose is to preserve that knowledge, and then to spread that knowledge, and to preserve that religion in yourself and those people around you. Second thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the book that He has not sent this religion so that the people who are carrying the religion become then the object of worship. This is Surah Al-Imran, and this makes sense because people have venerated Anbiya and ended up worshipping them instead of worshipping Allah, even though that they came with the message of Tawheed. But then He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, and here's the point, وَلَكِنْ كُونُوا رَبَّانِيِّينَ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تُعَلِّمُونَ الْكِتَابِ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَدْرُسُونَ. What's a Rabbani? The ulama have given 2 explanations as to what a Rabbani is, and they both explain one another. Number 1, a Rabbani is the one who prioritizes ilm, and he gives himself a syllabus. He learns it in stages. And this is what you will find from the ulama of the Salaf. You will find more than one of the ulama of the Salaf authoring a small treatise and then having a bigger book. Where's the in-between? There is no in-between. Why? Because when you prioritize year 1, the books in year 1, the different topics in year 1, then you prioritize year 2, even though you're at beginning level, you are now a Rabbani. Why? Because you are now establishing for yourself a priority, a syllabus. You are pacing yourself so that that foundation remains, which then prepares you for the bigger things, the more complicated things. Without that, you won't have anything as a foundation to build your religion. But the second thing that the ulama have mentioned as an explanation of being a Rabbani is that he puts his ilm into practice. وَلَكِنْ كُونُوا رَبَّانِيِّينَ, because they were not Rabbaniyun, meaning the people of the book from before. Now, how does it fuse together? By learning in stages, you will apply in stages, then you will grow. Year 1 will soon become year 2, will soon become year 3, will soon then become the bigger books. As long as you are benefiting yourself and you are establishing that ilm in other people. Third thing, now this is actually very important because a lot of people ask me this question. I've learned something but then I forget it. How do I establish that knowledge in myself? How do you memorize things? How do you remember the different aqwal from the different madahib and their evidences? How do you go back and forth in this way? This point is very important in this. Now bear with me in this, because a lot of this makes sense, but it leads to something. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says, when you learn, you have now sought ilm for yourself and now you have attained it. That ilm will grow when you start to revise. Many of the ulama have said from the Salaf, al-mudhakara hayatul ilm. Revising it is life to that knowledge that you have learnt. Without that mudhakara, without that revision and that repetition and that revision, it's nothing, it's just there. Maybe you've got it, maybe you haven't got it, maybe you've forgotten it. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says, now he has attained that ilm, he now begins to revise. After revising, he now begins to spread it and teach it to other people. When he follows those 3 steps, he establishes that knowledge in himself. Makes sense? But then he says, rahimahullah, this is what creates dabt and adala. Dabt is precision, and adala is uprightness. You then become an individual who is precise and accurate. Obviously people have mistakes, but as to the best of your ability, you are improving and you are making accurate the knowledge that you have been granted from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With what? With that revision, with that teaching and that spreading. But then you become a person of al-adala, and the ulama have said that you can tell that this person is adil because he is establishing what is wajib upon him and he's staying away from what is haram. That for me defines what a practicing person is. That for me defines what a practicing person is. A person who prays, a person who's got a beard, a person who wears a niqab is not practicing enough. The person who establishes a dabt and adala in himself, that person is an upright person. And I say this because the ulama of hadith only took from the person who had these 2 characteristics. If you don't have it, then you'll be rejected. You'll be classed as weak or whatever else it may be. Therefore, and if you want more on this point here, go back to the introduction of Imam Muslim in his Sahih, where he gives so many narrations from the ulama, the Salaf, where they have given importance to learning, revising, teaching. Remember, my focus on this small kalima and this small reminder is the importance of benefiting other people. What are the characteristics of the people of Jannah? Smallest surah in the Quran. Every single one of them memorized it. They believe, and included in that belief is ilm. They have amal salih in themselves. And then they have then tawasi upon the haqq and upon sabr. If the person has these characteristics where he has attained ilm for himself, he's making himself upright, he's preserving himself, he's improving himself, but then not only is he putting in practice for himself, but then he is benefiting other people with that knowledge, that person has attained those characteristics of the people of Jannah. He doesn't need to be Shaykh al-Islam for having that. As long as he has attained anything from beneficial knowledge, he then puts it into practice, he then reminds and then is patient upon that. He has attained those characteristics. And that's the bashara from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glad tidings that he is witnessing himself before he gets the greatest bashara when he returns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is advice to myself and all the students that took part, and for everybody else that is listening. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He rewards this masjid and He preserves this masjid and He grants tawfiq to this masjid, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps them firm and makes their affairs easy. And likewise we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us all beneficial knowledge and righteous actions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it as a proof for us and not against us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us firm upon this religion until we meet Him. And just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us Sirat al-Mustaqim in the life of this dunya, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a safe travel over the Sirat when you will have nothing except for the nur that you have gathered from the life of this dunya. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when He enters His people into Firdaus al-A'la, that He makes us of the first amongst them. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.